this. You're having these massive emotional reactions in adulthood: panic, shame, maybe a really deep fear of abandonment, and they just seem to emerge out of nowhere. But then, when you try to look backward, directly into your past, the memories themselves feel kind of incomplete, or distant, or honestly just completely absent. You might find yourself saying exactly this: I don't really remember much. It's a deeply confusing experience, right? To feel so much but remember so little. And you might even catch yourself saying things like, well, nothing that bad happened, or my childhood was mostly normal. Because the actual autobiographical story feels so incomplete, a lot of people use phrases exactly like this to just dismiss their own reactions. We naturally tend to assume that, if we can't consciously recall a painful experience in perfect detail, it honestly couldn't have affected us all that much. Or maybe you totally resonate with this feeling. I know I was unhappy, but I can't explain why. Without a really clear story to point to, people start this exhausting search for proof that their pain is quote-unquote valid enough to deserve attention. We just start to completely distrust our own reactions. Well, today we're going to look at exactly why that happens, and we're going to validate that really painful search. So, welcome to today's Explainer. I am literally so thrilled you're here with me because we are about to completely decode how the body stores history that the conscious mind just cannot narrate. Today, we're exploring the neuroscience of trauma, how the body remembers what the mind forgets. We are going to fundamentally change how you understand your own memory, your own nervous system, and ultimately your own healing. Okay, let's dive right in by fundamentally changing how we view the brain, starting with the myth of perfect memory. To really understand our pain, we basically have to throw out the idea that human memory is some literal recording device, perfectly preserved inside the brain and replaying the past on command. It doesn't work like that. In reality, cognitive neuroscience shows us that memory is reconstruction. It's the active rebuilding of an experience during recall. Think of it less like clicking open a saved file on your computer and a lot more like, say, performing a live jazz solo. Every single time you recall it, your present emotion, your expectations, and your current context actually change the tune. Memory is biologically alive. It is constantly being remolded. Let's move to our next section and see how this builds, because to understand trauma, we absolutely have to distinguish between two completely different memory systems: implicit versus explicit memory. So to understand those profound feelings that we just can't quite explain, we've got to look at how we develop. Your nervous system is continuously learning emotional expectations way before the brain can organize a neat chronological story. Look at infancy. Our implicit memory is already absorbing emotional tone and relational safety. Then, in early childhood, the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain we absolutely need to create those chronological stories, is only gradually maturing. Actually, it's not until later that explicit autobiographical memory is fully available to us. This beautifully explains childhood amnesia. Your nervous system was learning deeply about what was safe and what was dangerous, long before your brain had the physical tools to write it down. And this just brilliantly illustrates the contrast between the two. You've got explicit memory over here, driven by the hippocampus, keeping a narrative timeline, giving you the cold hard facts. But then on the other side, you have implicit memory, which is all your bodily sensations, the emotional tone, your relational expectations. The storytelling mind relies entirely on facts and linear logic, right? But the remembering body operates completely outside of your conscious awareness, making these incredibly fast survival decisions. Which brings us to the body's hidden history and how these unconscious survival responses actually show up. Now, what's really wild about this is how implicit memory creates survival responses that honestly don't feel historical to us. Instead, they feel profoundly personal. We actually mistake them for our personality. Things like chronic muscular tension, emotional shutdown, hypervigilance, compulsive caretaking. I mean, how many adults do you know who say, "Oh, I'm just naturally a worrywart," or "I'm just naturally bad at relationships"? In reality, their nervous system is expressing a learned procedural adaptation. It's a survival habit that the body practiced over and over. It's not just who you are. So the absolute crucial point is this: the body carries history even when the mind cannot narrate it clearly. Emotional memory, like, say, a sudden wave of panic triggered by the sound of heavy footsteps in a hallway, or a deep feeling of dread just because a boss sighs heavily. That doesn't require a verbal explanation to remain incredibly active. Your body tightens up before you even know why. The body simply remembers completely differently than the storytelling mind does. Okay, so what happens when survival actually interrupts the story? This is where memory fragmentation comes in. Why does our conscious mind struggle so much to just produce a coherent, explanatory story when extreme stress happens? Well, first off, overwhelming stress entirely disrupts our normal memory encoding processes. The nervous system has a very urgent job to do. It has to prioritize immediate survival. It literally does not have the time or energy to write a neat little memoir. Because of that, the experience gets stored as isolated sensory fragments instead of a nice chronological narrative. Trauma essentially forces your nervous system to abandon linear storytelling in favor of immediate physiological defense. And because of that massive disruption, what does get stored are these vivid, sometimes terrifying fragments. It could be a specific smell, like a certain cologne, or a sudden tightening of the throat. Maybe just the sheer emotional terror itself, or even a particular expression on someone's face. This perfectly explains why trauma survivors so frequently recall specific emotional atmospheres with intense clarity, but completely struggle to organize the actual events linearly.
Listen, if you take absolutely nothing else away from this today, please remember this. The brain did not fail. It prioritized survival over storytelling. If you've ever invalidated yourself or judged yourself for having a fragmented memory of a really painful time, the neuroscience directly validates you right here. Your brain didn't break. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do to keep you alive.
And it's so vital to realize that trauma isn't just about what happened once. It can emerge from what happened repeatedly, or even from what failed to happen at all. Developmental trauma is often deeply cumulative. This means your nervous system absorbed a persistent emotional atmosphere. Maybe it was constant unpredictability or fear or emotional neglect, and it absorbed it gradually over years rather than in one single catastrophic event. So you might not have one clear story to point to, but the body still learned. The nervous system still adapted. But here is where the science shifts from just validating our past pain to offering some profound hope for our future, rewriting emotional expectations. This is all about memory reconsolidation, and it's literally a paradigm-shifting discovery. Reconsolidation is this brief window during memory recall when a memory actually becomes temporarily unstable, allowing its emotional associations to be modified before being safely stored away again. Now, for a really long time, scientists thought long-term memories were essentially locked in a vault, completely permanently. But reconsolidation proves that the brain remains capable of revision throughout your entire life. How amazing is that? We can actually map out exactly how this rewiring works. Say your old implicit expectation, deep down, was that need leads to abandonment. Well, if you have a corrective experience of consistent connection, your updated nervous system lesson literally becomes not every relationship repeats the past. Or if your brain learned that conflict leads to catastrophe, experiencing healthy relational repair updates that lesson to calmness can survive. By experiencing repeated new instances of safety and connection, you're actually updating the body's older automatic emotional expectations. Now, to be clear, the crucial point to remember here is this. We are talking about a revision of your emotional expectation, not a revision of factual reality. Obviously, we cannot erase our history, but we absolutely can shift the physiological activation and the emotional meaning that's attached to it. The facts of the past remain exactly what they are, but your nervous system's automatic defensive reaction to them, that can absolutely change. Let's bring all this incredible science together to look at the compassionate truth and exactly what this means for you. What does this actually look like for you today? A sudden tightening of the chest, a wave of panic during silence, a feeling of collapse after criticism, an overwhelming compulsion to please. These reactions are very often the nervous system's actual language of memory. I really want you to remember that if healing required perfect narrative memory, a lot of us could just never heal. But these bodily reactions, they are themselves valid memories. They are literally how your body remembers the past. The core message of the science here is beautifully simple. Fragmented memory does not mean fragmented pain is imaginary. Your emotional pain is entirely real. The body simply remembers differently than the conscious mind does. Sometimes the story arrives first, sure, but very often, especially with trauma, the emotion arrives first. And the conscious storytelling mind has to slowly discover the story long after the emotion has already shown up at the door. So I want to leave you with a final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. If your body remembers completely differently than your conscious mind, what is your nervous system trying to tell you today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this leaves you feeling validated, curious, and eager to explore the profound wisdom of your own implicit memory. See you next time.
Thank you for watching. If something in this resonated with you, then you're already closer than you think. If you're ready to go deeper, there's a link below to my book, The Survival Self: How Childhood Adaptation Becomes Adult Identity, and How to Finally Live Beyond It. This isn't theory, it's a framework you can actually use. Tap the link below and step into it.